The forest was quiet, too quiet. Even the wind had stopped moving. Birds didn't sing, and the air felt heavy. Valari stepped carefully over the roots, her blue skin glowing softly in the fading light. Her younger sister Nisha followed close. Behind, carrying a small woven basket. "We should not go this far," Nisha whispered. "We need the healing roots," Valari answered, keeping her voice low. "If we don't bring them back, Mother's fever will get worse." The forest near the old human ruins was known to be cursed. Their people told stories about sharp machines hiding under leaves and soil. But those were old stories. Nobody had seen a human in over 20 years. Some even believed humans were all gone now. Valari spotted the silver-green leaves they needed. She knelt and began to dig gently. Nisha stayed nearby, watching the trees. Suddenly, a loud snap shook the air. Valari screamed. Pain exploded through her leg. Metal jaws had clamped down just above her ankle. The sharp rusted teeth bit deep into her flesh. Blood spilled onto the dry forest floor. Nisha dropped her basket and rushed to her. "No, no, no, stay still, sister." But as Nisha moved closer, another sound came, a hiss, a click, and something flew from the ground. A second trap hidden under old leaves snapped shut on Nisha's wrist. Pulling her to the ground, both sisters were caught. Valari bit her lip to stop from crying. "Don't scream. Someone might hear." Nisha was already crying softly, holding her bleeding wrist with her free hand. "We'll die here, won't we?" Valari looked around. No one would come. No one even dared walk this deep. The human ruins were haunted, they said, full of leftover traps, poison fogs, and ghost machines. Their people never entered this area, not even for war. The metal of the trap burned her skin. She tried to move, but the teeth only dug deeper. She could feel her heartbeat in her foot. Her leg was starting to go cold. "I'm sorry, Valari." Nisha whispered, "I should have stopped you." "No, I made the choice," Valari said. She reached for her sister's hand, and their fingers locked tightly. "If we die together." Nisha nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. The sky turned orange, then dark blue, then black. The sisters didn't move. They were too weak. The traps were too strong. Their blood stained the grass and leaves. Valari's voice was weak now. "Tell Mother I tried." Nisha tried to answer, but her throat felt dry and full of ash. They both closed their eyes. Then they heard something crunch. Crunch, leaves being stepped on. Not far. Heavy footsteps. Not beast footsteps. Something walking to legs. Valari's eyes opened wide. Nisha held her breath. They heard it again. Closer now. Crunch, dot. Crunch, then silence. Valari's heart pounded. "That's not one of us," she whispered. "No animal either," Nisha replied. "It walks like..." They didn't finish the sentence. A shadow appeared behind the trees. A tall figure stepped out. It was humanoid. It wore armor made of old earth steel. Small light blinked on its chest. Its face was hidden behind a dusty visor. Nisha's mouth opened in terror. Human. Valari's grip tightened. She reached slowly for a stone beside her. The figure walked toward them slowly, hands raised. No weapon. No sound. Valari threw the stone with what little strength she had. It bounced off the human's chest. He stopped, then knelt. He took off his helmet. He was pale-skinned with tired green eyes and short brown hair. His face looked like it hadn't smiled in years. Valari froze. She had never seen a human in real life. Only drawings. Only in warnings. He reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a small square device. He pointed it at the trap on her. Leg, beep, click, click. The trap hissed and opened. Valari screamed in pain. The man crawled over to Nisha and did the same. Beep, click. Her wrist was free. He reached into another pouch, pulled out a roll of soft cloth, and tore it into strips. Without a word, he wrapped Nisha's wrist gently, then Valari's ankle. The human looked at them, but didn't speak. He just nodded once, then sat back against a tree, as if saying, "You're safe now." Valari stared at him, not blinking. A human had saved them. But why? Her body still hurt. Her mind raced. Who was he? What did he want? And why? Did he look just as lost as they felt? Valari sat still, her back pressed against the tree. Her leg throbbed from the metal bite, but her eyes stayed locked on the human sitting across the fire. He hadn't said a word. He hadn't even smiled. Nisha sat beside her, hand wrapped in bandages the human had made from his own clothes. She looked at her sister, then back at the stranger. The fire cracked softly between them. "This is wrong," Nisha whispered under her breath. Valari nodded, but didn't reply. Everything about this moment felt wrong yet safe. The man had freed them. He had treated their wounds. But he was still a human. Their people believed humans were monsters from old wars. Their faces were shown only in warnings, with blood on their hands and fire in their eyes. But this man had no fire, no anger, no scent. That was the strangest part. Aliens could sense things' emotions, energy, fear, but this man had nothing. No aura, no scent, no feeling. Nisha's voice shook. "He smells like empty space." Valari whispered back, "He feels like a machine, but breathes like us." The human finally moved. He reached into a metal box and took out a clear pouch. Water. He held it out to Nisha, who froze. Valari touched her sister's arm. "Take it, but carefully." Nisha reached for it with shaking hands. The man didn't flinch. She took a sip, and her eyes widened. It wasn't poisoned. It was clean, cold. The man then pointed at himself. "Jace," he said slowly. Nisha blinked. Did he just name himself? Valari nodded slowly. "Jace," she pointed at herself. Valari, then at her sister Nisha. Jace nodded once. His voice was quiet, dry, like someone who hadn't spoken in days. "I won't hurt you." Nisha leaned closer to her sister. "Why is he here?" Valari whispered back. "I don't know." But he knew how to unlock human traps. Jace looked at them, and then at the wounds. He frowned, reached into a bag, and took out something else, a small round object with lights. He pressed it to Valari's ankle. It buzzed. She winced, but then the burning faded. Her skin cooled. Nisha gasped. "He's healing you." Valari couldn't believe it. This human was using old Earth tech to fix her bones. It wasn't magic. It wasn't kindness either. It was something else. Survival. JCE looked older than them. His eyes had deep lines around them, and his hands were covered in scars. He looked like someone who had seen too many battles, and maybe lost too many people. When he finished, he turned to Nisha, doing the same to her wrist. She flinched at first, but then let him work. His hands were careful, gentle. Not the hands of a killer, Valari finally asked. "Why did you save us?" He paused, then looked away. His voice was low. "You looked like someone I lost." Valari and Nisha didn't understand, but they didn't need to. The fire kept burning. "Night creatures?" called from the trees, but none came close. Something about the human's scentless presence pushed them away. Suddenly, Jace stood. He listened, then pointed toward the woods, holding one finger to his lips. Silence. Valara didn't hear anything at first. Then she did. A soft crunch. Then another Jaki picked up a long knife from his bag and stepped away from the fire. Valari whispered, "He hears something." Nisha reached for her sister. "Is it another human?" Valari shook her head. "No, humans walk straight. This one drags." Jace disappeared into the dark, leaving them alone. The firelight flickered weakly without his shadow near it. Valari tried to stand, but her leg couldn't carry her. Nisha crawled to her side, holding a thick stick. Far off, something growled. Then, flash metal striking bone. A shriek. Then silence again. Minutes passed. Jace returned. His sleeve was torn. Blood soaked his arm. In one hand he carried the same blade, now covered in dark liquid. In the other, he held a strange head, too large to be human or animal. He dropped it to the side, sat down and said one word, "Scavenger." Valari stared at him. "You protected us." He didn't reply. Just leaned back, bleeding quietly. Noi Shaw slowly crawled over, took the bandages he had used on her, and pressed them to his arm. Valor, I watched the human close his eyes, not in sleep, but in pain. This creature with no scent, no aura, no name before today had just killed for them. Not as a monster, not as a soldier, but as someone who still remembered how to care. The fire burned low, throwing soft light across the cold forest floor. Valari sat beside her sister, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes locked on the wounded human who had just saved their lives.
What?
Jace lay quietly near the fire, one arm across. His chest, the other still bleeding beneath makeshift wrappings. He hadn't spoken again. Not after returning with that strange, long-faced creature's head. Not after Nisha pressed cloth to his wound. Not even after the second time Valari asked his name. He just rested there silent, watching the flames dance like ghosts between them. Nisha whispered, "He's still awake." Valari nodded. "He's listening." The night wrapped around them. Like a thick blanket, owls hooted far off, trees creaked. But inside their small circle of firelight, time felt frozen. Valari reached for her sister's hand. "He's not like the humans in the old stories." Nisha looked over. "He didn't scream in battle. He didn't laugh when he killed. Maybe he's broken. Maybe we all are." Jace shifted slightly, opening one tired eye. "Think I can't hear that?" Valari flinched. "You didn't answer the first 2 times?" "I wasn't sure what to say," he replied, voice hoarse but calm. Nisha sat up straighter. "Why did you save us?" Jace didn't move. He stared at the stars through the tree branches, "'Cause I don't like seeing girls die alone in the woods." Valari narrowed her eyes. "That's not an answer." He looked at her finally, his face lit by flickering flame. "You remind me of someone, 2 people actually, your family, my daughters," he said. The silence after that felt heavier than before. Valari's voice softened. "They're gone." Jace nodded once. "Long before your kind ever touched this part of the planet?" Nisha asked. "Did our kind kill them?" "No," Jace replied. "Mine did." He sat up slowly, groaning from the pain. He reached into his pack and pulled out something that shimmered 2 small silver pendants on a thin black cord. He handed them to Valari. She stared at them but didn't take them. "They wore these," he said. "I kept them. Thought maybe one day someone would wear them again." Valari hesitated, then took them with slow fingers. "They're beautiful. Not as much as they were," he said quietly, then looked away. The sisters didn't know what to say. For a while, no one spoke. The fire popped and cracked gently. The scent of burned wood mixed with dried blood and forest dew. Valari finally asked, "Why are you here? All alone?" Adace laughed softly, a dry sound that barely counted as humor. "Because there's nowhere else to be." Nisha tilted her head. "Don't humans live in big cities?" "Not anymore," he said. "Not the kind who don't want war." Valari understood something in that moment. Jace wasn't just wandering. He was running from his own kind. From his past, maybe from guilt. She looked at her sister's bandaged wrist, then at her own healing leg. Without Jace, they'd be dead. Without them, he'd still be alone. "You should eat," Valari said. Jace looked surprised. "What?" She picked up a packet from his supplies, the one with dried food. She opened it, pushed it toward him. He took it slowly, nodded, "Thanks." As he chewed, Nisha asked, "Do you live in these woods?" Jace swallowed. "There's a bunker, not far. Old Earth facility." "I keep it working," Valari asked. "Will you go back there?" He shrugged. "After I'm sure nothing else is hunting you?" That silence returned. But now it felt different, less sharp, softer, warmer, like maybe the fire wasn't just made of wood anymore. It was made of shared pain, shared survival. Jace leaned back, staring at the sky again. "It's funny. I've killed aliens before in war. But you too. You don't look like soldiers." Valari's voice was calm, but firm. "We're not. We came for medicine." He smiled faintly, found metal teeth instead. And a ghost, Nisha added. Jace raised an eyebrow. Is that what you think I am? Valari answered, before her sister could. Not anymore. Then, for the first time since they met him, she smiled. Just a little, just enough. The fire had turned to embers, glowing low in the ashes. Nisha was already asleep, her head resting on Valari's shoulder. The air was cold and still, the kind of silence that made your skin feel too tight. Valari didn't sleep. She watched. The trees watched the dark. Jace was sitting across from her, his knife resting on his lap. His wound had stopped bleeding, but his eyes stayed open. He hadn't relaxed once since he came back from killing that strange beast. He was listening, always listening. Valari whispered, "You don't trust the night." Jace nodded. "Night doesn't care what you are. It just hides everything that wants to eat you." Valari looked toward the trees. "Are more coming?" "Probably," he said, his voice like stone. "The scent of blood draws them." She leaned forward. "Then why aren't we moving?" "'Cause moving with wounds makes noise. Noise brings death. Staying still gives us a chance." A branch cracked in the distance. Valari froze. Jace stood slowly, his knife in one hand, his flashlight in the other. He didn't turn it on. He just waited. Every part of him focused. Nisha stirred in her sleep. Valari quickly held her close, whispering softly, "Stay quiet, little flame. Don't wake now."
There.
It was again crack, crunch, something dragging against bark. Jace looked toward the sound. Then back at Valari. "Stay behind me," he said. Valari's voice dropped. "You can't fight again. You're injured." He didn't answer. He only stepped forward, slow and quiet like a hunter. Valari picked up a rock, sharp-edged, heavy. She couldn't walk far, but she'd throw it if she had to. No one would take her sister, not while she breathed. Another noise closer this time. A low hiss, not like air. Not like wind. Jace turned sharply. Then something darted between the trees, tall, hunched and fast. Valari's heart jumped. Jace crouched, scanning the trees. His body was still, but his eyes moved fast. It came again, but from the left a flash of gray skin, long arms, claws that touched the ground as it ran. Valari whispered, "That's not the same kind as before." Jace nodded once. "It's worse." Then dashed silence. Not a single sound. Even the insects stopped. Valari held her breath. Then, the growl came from above. Jack looked uphand, rolled aside just in time. A creature dropped from a tree, missing him by inches. It slammed into the dirt, screeching, claws flashing. Limbs like knives. Valari screamed, grabbed her sister, and crawled back against the roots of a tree. Jace didn't run. He charged. He slammed the knife into the beast's chest once. It kept moving. Its mouth opened wide, rows of black teeth. It struck him across the face. Jace flew back into the leaves, blood flying from his mouth. Valari threw her rock. It hit the creature's shoulder. It turned its head, yellow eyes locking on her. She met its gaze, shaking, but refusing to look away. It took one step toward her. Then a sound rang through the forest, a pop, sharp and loud. The creature's head jerked. Another pop, the top of its skull shattered. It dropped then stopped. Jace stood behind it, holding a small human weapon, smoke rising from the barrel. Valari stared. He had a gun, hadn't used it before. She didn't ask why. Jack collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. Valari crawled over, grabbed the bandages from his pack, and started wrapping his new wounds without a word. Nisha finally woke up, rubbing her eyes. "What happened?" Dari didn't answer. "She just kept wrapping," Jace whispered. "We're not alone in these woods." Valari's voice was calm. "We never were." Jace looked up at her, surprised by the strength in her tone. She met his eyes. "We leave at dawn." He nodded. "Yes, together." For the first time, the night didn't feel so wide. The forest looked different at sunrise, less like a graveyard, more like a battlefield that had stopped breathing. Mist floated low to the ground, and the air was heavy with the scent of blood and smoke. Valari sat near the dying fire, her arms wrapped around Nisha, who hadn't spoken since the creature fell. Jace stood by the edge of the clearing, wiping the blood from his face with the last clean piece of cloth. His eyes were red not from tears, but from exhaustion and something deeper. Something old Nisha finally whispered, "Is it over?" Jace didn't turn around. For now. Valari looked at her sister, brushing the dirt from her hair. "We're still breathing. That means we keep moving." Jace walked toward them, his steps uneven. One arm hung limp by his side. He dropped a sack full of gear beside the fire and sat down with a wince. His shirt was torn, soaked in blood, some of it his, some of it not. Valari asked, "How many more of those things are out there?" He stared into the flames. "Too many." Nisha's voice shook. "Then why didn't they come last night?" Jace pulled a long tooth from his belt pouch and held it up. "Because this one was the alpha." Valari reached for the tooth. It was curved, black, and pulsing with faint heat. "It looks alive," as Jace said. "These things aren't just beasts, they think. They trap. They plan." Nisha pulled her knees close, like humans. Jace didn't answer. Valari narrowed her eyes. "You've fought them before, haven't you?" He looked at her. "I used to lead hunts." "Back when humans still had armies on this planet," Nisha asked. "So what happened to your army?" His voice dropped low. "We became the hunted." Silence wrapped around them again, but this time it didn't feel like fear. It felt like truth, ugly and cold. Valari stood slowly, using a stick for balance. "Then we leave now. Don't wait for the next one." Jace shook his head. "You won't. Make it far. You need rest. I need this arm stitched before it falls off." He pulled out a small metal case, opened it, and took out a strange silver thread and a needle-like tool. Valari knelt beside him, surprised. "You're going to sew yourself?" "Done it before," he said. She took the tool from his hand. "Not this time." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" She looked him straight in the eyes. "You bled for us. Let me bleed a little for you." He didn't argue. Valari cleaned his wound with water, then pressed the edge of the needle into his torn skin. Jace didn't flinch, not once. He just looked away, focusing on the trees. Nisha sat beside him, holding his other hand. After the fourth stitch, she whispered, "You could have left us." "You didn't." Jace looked at her. "I couldn't." "Why?" Valari asked. He answered quietly. "'Cause I've seen too many bodies left in the woods. I wasn't going to add yours to them." Valari finished the stitching and tied the last knot with a trembling hand. "You're strange, Jace." He gave a tired smile. "I hear that a lot." They packed what little they had, dried food, tools, torn maps. Jace checked the weapon once more, then hid it under his coat. As they moved through the forest, Valari walked with a limp, leaning on Nisha. Jace stayed close, every step cautious. They passed twisted trees and broken ruins, all swallowed by vines. Symbols from old Earth still marked the stone signs of war and warnings from a time no one remembered. Suddenly, Nisha stopped. "What's that?" Ahead, a small figure was hanging from a branch, bones wrapped in rotting cloth. A pendant around its neck shimmered in the light. Valari stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "That's not one of ours." Jay stepped forward and removed the pendant. He stared at it. "She was one of us." "Your people?" Valari asked. He nodded, a scout. "Years ago," Nisha whispered. "What do we do?" Jace placed the pendant in a small hole near the tree, then covered it with stones. He whispered something the sisters couldn't understand. Valari placed her hand on his arm. His hands were soaked in blood, but none of it was theirs. Not anymore. The trees thinned with each step, but the land grew stranger. The forest floor cracked beneath their feet, revealing shattered tiles and metal plates buried in the soil. Nature had tried to swallow the past, but the bones of old Earth still pushed. Through Valari walked slowly, leaning on Jace's shoulder. Her legs still burned, but she refused to fall. Nisha walked ahead, carrying what little food they had left, eyes scanning every shadow. "This place," Jace said, "was once a research zone. Quiet, hidden, until war turned it inside out. Valari looked around. It doesn't look like war. It looks like ghosts built it and forgot to leave. Jace nodded. That's not far from the truth. They crossed a rusted bridge, half collapsed. Over a dry stream bed. Below, bones poked through the dirt long, twisted, some still wearing cracked armor. Not alien bones. Human Knight Shaw stopped at the far side. How much farther? There's a station ahead, Jace said, pointing past the trees. Abandoned for years, but some of the systems still work. If we reach it, you can call for help.
Valari
Raised her voice, sharp now. Help from who? Our kind left this region for dead. No one will come. Jace looked at her carefully. Then you'll be the first to return. They passed a statue near the edge of the ruins. It was broken in half, once a figure in a long coat, arm outstretched toward the stars. Nisha tilted her head. Was that one of your leaders? Jace didn't answer. He stepped around it without a word. The wind blew hard now, sharp with dust. The sound of metal scraping echoed from the left. Valari reached for her knife. Jace held out his arm. That's just wind against old doors. Nothing alive down there. Not anymore. They moved toward the structure. A round bunker door stood, buried in dirt and vines. Jace knelt and began tapping on a control panel hidden under a rock. It blinked to life. Old Earth letters flashing red, then green. The door hissed open. Nisha stepped back. It's dark. Jace tossed a small glow stick. Inside, light spilled down a narrow tunnel, full of dust and hanging wires. Stay close, he said. They entered the bunker one by one, the air thick with metal and age. Inside, everything felt frozen, like the world outside had moved on. But this place had waited for them. They passed storage rooms, empty labs, shattered screens. Valari asked, "Why bring us here?" Jace stopped beside a door marked communication room. Because you need to be seen. You need someone to know what happened out there. He powered on the terminal. The screen flickered, then lit up. A soft hum filled the room. Nisha stared. You think someone will answer? Maybe not today, Jace said, but someday. If you're kind, here's what happened. If they know you survived, they might change how they see us. Valari stepped forward. We were taught to fear humans, to run, to hate. Jace looked at her. And now, she didn't answer. She just reached into her pouch and pulled out one of the silver pendants. He gave her the one from his daughters. She placed it gently on the console. I'll make sure they're remembered, she said. He looked away quickly, as if his eyes were suddenly too heavy. Nigh. Shaw walked to the window. The forest stretched far behind them, endless and quiet. Valari joined her. This was never just about surviving the trap, Nisha asked. Then what was it? Learning why we were saved. Jace stepped outside for air. The wind had shifted, again, lighter now, carrying the scent of distant rain. He looked toward the sky, whispered something to himself, then turned back. Valari stood at the door, watching him. You're not going with us, are you? Jace gave a tired smile. This world already took everything from me. Doesn't get you to. Nisha grabbed his sleeve. You can't stay here. I've walked these ruins too long, he said. But you two are still building something. Valari stepped closer. You're part of that something. He shook his head slowly. I was the fire in the dark, that's all. The sisters didn't cry. They didn't beg, but as they walked away, across the broken stones and forgotten metal, they both looked back, and Jace stood there watching, as if guarding something more than a bunker, as if guarding hope itself. The shuttle landed on the southern ridge with a deep mechanical hum, its silver hull reflecting the light of two suns rising behind the clouds. Wind swept over the cliffs, carrying dust and leaves from the forgotten ruins below. The pilot opened the side hatch and stepped out with a blaster, ready expecting wreckage. Bodies or worse. But instead he saw two figures walking up the slope slowly, carefully, side by side. Two alien girls, one limping, leaning on a thick branch, blood-dried. On her leg, the other holding a makeshift satchel filled with human tools, a worn pendant shining against her chest. No guards, no escort, only survival. Valari squinted through the wind, her voice steady.
This
It's where they told us never to return.
Stood taller beside her. That's exactly why we came. The soldiers approached them with caution. Weapons were drawn. Questions came fast. Who are you? Where were you? Why are you armed with human gear? Valari didn't flinch. She handed over the pendant and said only one name, Jace. Da. The officers went silent. That name hadn't been spoken in years, not since Earth's retreat. Valari continued. He saved us, protected us, bled for us. He is not your enemy. They were taken to a camp nearby, a prison, but not free either. Medical units scanned their wounds. Artificial voices asked questions. Their answers were clear and unbroken. When the elders arrived, robes flowing, eyes full of disbelief, Valari stepped forward again. You called them ghosts, she said. You said they were monsters. But one of them carried me through the dark. One of them fought off the real beasts. An elder spoke, his tone hard. He could have used you, used your trust.
Oh.
Their kind lies with kindness. Nisha stepped forward. Then why did he stay behind when he could have run with us? No one answered. Valari opened the small satchel and pulled out the communication chip worn, scratched and marked with a single Earth crest. He gave us this. Said it could speak when we couldn't. Said someone would listen someday. Room grew quiet. She placed it on the table. I'm speaking now. That night, the council met in secret. Old memories were pulled from archives. The chip was played. Jace's voice echoed through the room, raw and honest. If you hear this, it means they made it. That's enough for me. I never wanted war. I wanted someone to live without it. Let them be that. His message wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. By morning, word had already spread. It's not just in their town, but across nearby regions. The story of the two girls who survived the metal traps, the human who stayed behind, the monsters that hunted the living and the dead alike. For the first time in years, fear didn't silence the name of a human, it honored one. Valari and Nisha were called symbols of peace, voices from the ruins. They were offered medals, titles, even places in the ruling halls. But they refused. Instead, they returned to the edge of the forest. Where the sky stretched wide and the wind still whispered between the trees, they stood near the cliff, where Jace had last looked at them. Valari placed a new stone marker in the ground. Not a grave, because they never saw him die, just a place to remember. The marker was carved with simple words. He stayed behind so we could walk forward. Nisha placed a second stone beside it, smaller, with both their names. We carry your fire, she whispered. They stayed there for a long while, not speaking, not crying, just listening to the wind, the rustling trees, and the peace that had finally come to a place once ruled by war. Far above, ships moved again across the sky, this time not to conquer, but to reconnect. Earth channels reopened. Warnings were rewritten. And somewhere, in the silence between two stars, a signal from the old ruins still played. You look like someone I lost. That was enough. Valari smiled as the wind brushed her face. Jace had been more than a human. He had been a choice, a lesson, a message. And now, that message belonged to them.